Welcome. Today concludes our 5 classes on the humor, really the humanity of Jesus. Now, during these previous 4 classes, I've tried to show by his very words, his communication techniques, his understanding of the audience, etc., that he did employ humor during his teaching. Well, let's try one more time to get at that entertaining, yes, humorous details his listeners heard in his teaching, largely in the stories or parables he told. For people were captivated by his story. They looked at this rabbi, this human being, and said, "He speaks with such authority." Listen up. Let us first pray. Dear Lord, our lives are full of stories, and you have told them so well. Lessons which we have ourselves been moved by and learned and laughed at some of the details because of how much they reveal about our lives with you and before you, and how much you love us and our sense of humor as well. In Christ. Amen. Now, in order for you to get a better sense of this parable I'm going to talk about today, I need to wear a common garment of the Middle East, what today is called a galabeah. Some years ago, I spoke at my parents' retirement community in front of about 50 people who were really interested to hear how Cinda and I had discovered modern Egypt. And I wore the garment you're about to see me get into, a galabeah. The talk went fine. As we returned to my parents' apartment, my mother, who was walking in front of Cinda and myself with my brother Doug, she said, "Douglas, we have got to get Stephen out of this dress." Well, a galabeah is more Middle Eastern men's coveralls. It's not a kaftan. It's a utilitarian garment out of a very hot, sweaty, dusty place. It covers and protects your clothes. So don't get excited. I'm wearing these clothes, and I'm going to cover them with a galabeah. Let me prove it. So this is a galabeah, and I want you to see me get into this. You notice I am fully dressed. Men in the Middle East are fully dressed as well. And basically, this long garment is a way to keep your long sleeve shirts, your shirt, your pants, whatever you're wearing, clean. But it's very important that you understand this is a common garment that was worn by men, and how this fits into the details of the story I'm about to tell. Listen now to the parable of the prodigal son found in the 15th chapter of Luke's Gospel. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he, the father, divided the property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant land. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods which the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and despair. But here I am, dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to the slaves, Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now the elder son was in the field. When he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. The slave replied, Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him home, safe and sound. Then this older son became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, Listen, for all these years I have worked for you like a slave. I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes. You killed the fatted calf for him. And the father said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we have to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. What? You're asking me to drop dead and give you your share of the inheritance now? What prompted this now? The father, according to his culture, the culture of the audience hearing this, could have just given him the back of his hand. Get out of here! Get out of my sight! I've been so hurt, wanting me dead. And who promised you your share? I can give it all to your older brother. Oh, is that what you're thinking? If you have to wait until I'm dead, you won't get anything? Could happen, unless he's generous and shares with you. And actually, folks, this is true in the Middle East today. The oldest boy gets it all, and if generous, splits it with the other children, even his sisters, as needed. But there's no guarantee. The oldest son, after the mother's death, gets it all. Now the audience is on the father's side in this. How arrogant of this younger son. How stupid. Why not wait a few years until we build up the wealth of this farm? Give it to him, Dad. Smack him. So the father divided his property between them. Astonishing. He did what? Sir, I am your investment planner from E.F. Hutton. We've talked about this for many years. To be conservative and patient, take the long view, allow your assets to mature and grow in value over time. You did what? And Jesus' audience then is shaking their heads, chuckling to themselves. The guy is crazy. To give this boy his inheritance now? But he did. The father generously divided the property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had. He got it all, yet he didn't leave immediately. So the word got out among the family members and servants and farmhands, and especially the once clueless older brother, who at this point in our story is holding his tongue. Now, some of the farmhands are totally wondering what's going on. But we know one is totally angry, and guess who? And I can't repeat for you the words he was using about this younger brother. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant land. And Jesus' audience cackles. You bet that good-for-nothing took off, got out of Dodge, went far away. Aren't we hearing another Jacob Esau story? The cheater gets it all and takes off for the far-off land. Actually, the hearers then were mad at the father, insulted by the younger son, and sympathetic to the older son. This is insane, absurd. This would never happen in one of our families. What insanity! There, in a far-off land, he, the suddenly well-heeled kid, squanders his property in desolate living. Yeah, we knew that's the way this story would end. We've seen it before, suddenly full of cash, full of new friends, full of himself and his popularity. We aren't surprised he lost it all, and now has nothing to show for it. Now, the Bible translates this as dissolute living, and I looked it up. It means loose, lax, unrestrained. He wasn't working for it, holding on to it, accounting for it. This is the first definition of the kind of lifestyle we would say totally irresponsible. He was a fool and really stepped in it. And the audience thought then and now, with lots of eyes rolling, what an idiot. But there's a secondary definition to dissolute I'm going to tell you about, but we're going to hold that till later. Now, so far, Jesus' audience is finding this story utterly ridiculous. What did this father do? It was so unnecessary. What happened to this young man? Well, what did we expect? And things go from bad to worse. When he had spent everything, a famine, a severe famine, took place throughout the country. Just when he needed some financial resources to save his neck, the money's gone and there's nothing to eat. It's a total famine. Not just locally, did you hear? It's throughout the land. You and I today would call it a pandemic. And Jesus went on. He began to be in need. And the audience burst into laughter. Really? No cash? No family? No BFF? A famine? He began to be in need. I wonder how long that took for him to realize it. Not long. Nothing makes you hungry more hungry than a famine. Guess he needs a job. But good paying jobs are tough to get during pandemics, don't we know? And it's clear he's a member of a minority. Last hired, first fired. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that far-off country. Now let's be honest. if he went far away from home in the telling of this Jewish rabbi, he is now among Gentiles. This predicament is getting really bad. Think, Jesus listeners. I mean, he's only working for his own survival. He's essentially a hobo, like one of those Great Depression guys who work for food. It's awful. It's low. But it's not as low as a Jewish boy can go. The citizens of this country sent him out into the fields to work among pigs. And the audience burst into laughter. This young man, he had it all. Family, farm, food, security, land, a future inheritance. He squandered it all. And this Jewish boy is now breaking Levitical code. He's working with pigs. And it continues to get worse. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods the pigs were eating. Yet no one gave him anything. Not even the pigs. And when he came to himself, Jesus says, the audience thought, I wonder how long that took. How many of my father's hands have bread enough to spare, but here I am dying of hunger. Reality check. I'm going to die. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. Have you ever rehearsed one of those little contrite speeches you know you had to give in front of your mother or father, a teacher, a friend? I have. You organize your thoughts. You keep it short. Your tone apologetic. Shedding a tear or two is good. His was the same. A speech we're going to hear him repeat. Trust me. Well, most of it. Now remember at the beginning of the parable, the audience was hearing about a father who did not punish his son for his entirely inappropriate asking of his share of the inheritance. Recall I said the audience expected this Middle Eastern father to give him some mean words on the back of his hand. Corporal punishment was okay then, and believe me, it's okay in the Middle East today. That crowd around Jesus would have all understood this. We're thinking they would have done the same, or if so stupid, the same thing would have happened to them. Sure, parents are to love their children, but this boy is beyond the pale. Shouldn't the children love and respect them as well? This desperate kid knows he broke one of the central of the 10 Commandments. Moses taught, after the first 4, which focused in total on having one God, not taking away God's name, not having idols, keeping the Sabbath, and before the other bad behaviors, murder, adultery, stealing, bearing false witness, coveting, the 5th commandment is honor your father and mother, so that our days will be long in the land that the Lord your God has given you. This son did not honor the father. Taking the cash, he ran off, leaving also the land God had given him. He fully broke the 5th commandment. Shame on you! And to this very day in the Middle East, shame is the worst. But now the story gets culturally weirder. Is that a word? Stranger. That same father who should have been so ticked, so disappointed, so disapproving of the younger son's request, returns now into the story. Now the son who has quit his job and set off from pig slop, famine, famished in the far-off land is going to the father. And like everyone in the audience knew, including the young man, the one who had memorized his little speech. He knew where to find his father. He'd be in his office paying the bills, or out with the others, the older brother, giving directions to the slaves and farm workers, staying on task, probably having written this kid off, even considering him dead to the family. That's where the audience was in their thinking. And as far as they were concerned, that's exactly where it should be. Jesus' father's acting impossibly odd to this audience, almost incomprehensibly, culturally mystifying. And while the son was far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. The audience is stunned. You mean the old man was out there looking, watching, wasting his time looking for a speck of resemblance of the son's figure returning? He should have been back with his family, managing the farm. Forget this awful son. And how long has that been going on? For days? For months? What was he feeling? Hoping? Gasp. Was this man crying? And here's the big moment of pathos in this parable. The father saw him and is filled with compassion. He ran. The father did what? The son did not walk the whole way, head down, in tears, repeating it over and over his little speech. Folks, you cannot run in a Galilea. Women know this who wear long skirts. You can walk a bit faster, I suppose, but not like an Olympian. Really run to the child you thought you had lost and now is on the horizon. This father, who pridefully should have expected the son to come to him, walking through his office door, led in by another farmhand. The father who was looking and waiting and hoping for his son's return. He lifts up his Galilea and reveals his naked legs. No. And the audience is laughing. Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. One should never go so low to pull up one's clothing, show off your naked legs, and run wildly through the fields. Jesus' listeners didn't like what this father was doing. It's just too generous. And they're covering their eyes. No! Obviously, some of the man's slaves had been kind of watching this fellow standing there, staring off into the distance. And when they saw him took off, they too began running. They joined him. The poor guy, he's off his rocker. The father, full tilt, runs to this totally filthy son, bowed, contrite, and he throws his arms around him and kisses him on his dusty face and neck. Without any hesitation, here's a total out in the open, in front of God and everybody, compassion and love, total acceptance, gladness. The young man tries to get the little speech out. Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. That's when it stops. Sure, it's true. He sinned against his father. This is a kind of prayer of confession where you get to be real honest before your father, but you don't get to tell the father what to do. That's enough. You said enough. And this amazing father, who's done all the hurting, waiting and watching, and now doing all the hugging and kissing and forgiving. This father who's so different from the other fathers and sons in the audience hearing this story, who knew how their fathers treated them and how they treat their own children. This amazing guy who accepted public ridicule for running bare-legged to his son, showing in front of God and everyone such acceptance, such love. In the rush of the running, hugging, and kissing, the father gets command of his emotions and says to the slaves, "Bring him a robe." Obviously, the son is dressed sloppily out of the slop. And not just any Galabea, the best one. He's my son, my beloved son. I've been waiting and watching for. Quickly get it, dress him. He'll not return to my home, our home, looking like this. And get the ring, the signet ring that proves he's a son of our family. I don't care what anyone else thinks, whether he deserves it or not. Put that ring on him, and let's return and celebrate his return. Oh, don't forget sandals. He's barefoot. Such a poor guy. How did he walk all this way home in bare feet? So the best robe to cover his nakedness, the ring to show he belongs to us, sandals to protect him. We're going to change his whole look. He's coming back to his family. Isn't that enough? No. Get the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate. Are you seeing the expression on this young man's emaciated, humble, contrite face? He expects the father to do the least. Give him a job, hard labor, eat some bread, and get pushed around by the chief foreman, the older brother. But the dad, who's been looking for him for a long time, waiting expectantly for him, ran to him, hugged and kissed him, clothed him, put a ring on his fingers and bells on his toes, I don't know, and regained his place in the family. And now a party begins. He's home again. When I would come home from college, and I went some 16-hour drive from our home to where I went to school, I would only come home at the end of every semester. When I was in the Air Force, my visits were even less frequent. When I got married and had 3 children, well, coming home from Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio, and I'm not asking you for your pity, but 5 round-trip flights you have to save for. And when we came home from Egypt, enough said. My mother would serve this huge pork roast for dinner and lots of bacon at breakfast because we didn't have pork in a Muslim country. And other family members would come by. There'd be phone calls. Neighbors would stop by. We just want to see if Stephen is still alive. I've experienced these wonderful occasions. But this one Jesus is describing is over the top. My family was just glad to have me home. This kid had to be forgiven. For this son of mine, did you notice the words the father uses? This son of mine was dead and is alive, lost and is found. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And they began to celebrate. They killed the fatted calf, an animal prepared for a party. Wasn't this already part of the Father's agenda? Like any of us, expecting really special guests. People were thrilled to finally have our home. We don't prepare all the food the day of the celebration. We've already planned the marinade and the salad. We've shopped for fresh produce, the ingredients for the dessert. You don't wait until the very day to prepare a special meal. You don't feed a fatted calf and fatten it up the day of the son's sighting. The dad had already prepared for the son's return, his welcome, his party. Yay! Wowee! But not everybody is so happy. The elder son was out in the fields. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves. What's going on? The elder son was doing his job, running the farm. In his faithfulness and hard work, had he not positioned himself to receive the full appreciation, the inheritance of the father? Did he really not like this snotty younger brother who perhaps had asked for the inheritance early because he wasn't so sure that his older brother was ever going to give him anything anyway? Well, I'm speculating. But the audience is now sympathetic to the older brother. They have questioned the strength of the father, along with this older man's breaking of so many cultural norms. As for the younger son, he's getting off easy. No, he's getting the welcome of a lifetime. The slave replied to the older brother, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound." Now it seems that the older brother is first really mad about the party. Never mind the guest of honor. He becomes angry and refuses to go in. This is no party for him to enjoy. He can't look at his father, and he certainly can't look at you-know-who. Again, the father does what is culturally incorrect. The host leaves the party and goes outside. He goes to his older son. He pleads with him. You know, there's a kind of consistency in this man's behavior. Listening, reaching out, showing his love. Has the audience clued in to, more metaphorically speaking, who this father is to all of his children? Whatever this father first said gets interrupted. For all of these years, the older brother says, I have been working like a slave for you. I've never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. We've got a divided audience here. Some of the audience members are thinking, even saying, right on, you tell that geezer. Others are wishing he'd be more careful. I mean, we don't want him to break the fifth commandment like the younger brother. And others are siding with the dad and his joy at the younger son being safe and sound, forgiven and welcomed. But when that son of yours came back, did you hear the older brother's words? Not my brother. That son of yours who wasted your money in dissolute living. Remember I told you the first definition of dissolute is lax, unrestrained. The later definition is immoral. And that is a broad category. And that's the blank the older brother fills. This son of your bad moral behavior with prostitutes. Now let's admit it. The young man wasted the money, ended up, feeding pigs, may have been involved with prostitutes. But the Rabbi Jesus now is sure telling an earthy, racy story about someone who asked for his inheritance early, wasted it on immoral behavior, ended up near death, and did return with a speech of contrition the father never fully listened to. He knew how bad he had been. I'll be just another servant. It's all I deserve. And how would the older brother have treated him when he got his goat? He would have had a party. And this new slave would never get in the house. How poignant this loving father is pleading to the older son. Come inside. I want you both, all my family, in my house. Glad to be together, alive, rejoicing, Son, he pleads, your brother is home safe and sound. The older brother had called him that son of yours. The father calls him this brother of yours. Was dead and has come to life. Was lost and has been found. Now, I suspect at the end of the story in its retelling, you're not finding it all quite so humorous, so funny, so outlandish. How human it is. How much we find ourselves in this story. I think Jesus is saying something much greater about the Father than the children and his enormous love. Yes, by the end of the parable, there is less humor and a lot more joy. Joy for the listeners, us. That the Father will give that total welcome, that forgiving of our mistakes when we wander foolishly off. When we have moved beyond separation and resentments and judgments. This Father is watching, encouraging, going out to, seeking reconciliation, living together in God's kingdom. The meaning is much bigger, and the assurance is love and joy. And I believe that's why this parable was told and is told over and over and over and over. Whatever place we children find ourselves, we're fully included in God's family. Whatever. Ah, the joy. Thank you for joining me in these classes. Let us pray. Our chief joy, O Lord, is our trust that you are our God, this wonderful parent who is ever looking out for us and wanting to welcome us fully into his house and celebrate. Lord Jesus, thank you for telling this story and bringing us this joy.